He was a human rights lawyer, then went on to become the spokesperson of President Rodrigo Duterte, and now a senatorial candidate under the slate of Bongbong Marcos, the son of the late dictator. Harry Roque joins us live as we get up close on his plans and platforms, as well as his stand on issues. Harry, great to have you with us on The Final Word. First of all, let's talk about jobs, employment, rising prices of fuel and basic commodities. If you are voted into the Senate, one of the 12, what will you do in terms of legislation to jumpstart the economy and create more jobs?
Well, you see, it's unfortunate that we have a confluence of very unfortunate events. No? You still have many provinces that still have to recover from Typhoon Odette. And then you have the pandemic, as well as a conflict in Europe that has caused prices of everything to go up. Naturally, government should use the national budget as an instrument to promote jobs, as well as to control inflation. No? I think the government is doing the correct thing right now. They're giving ayuda to the poorest of the poor, as well as giving gasoline subsidies to farmers and fisher folk.
Is the ayuda of 200 pesos sufficient, or is it right to raise it to 500 pesos?
The president ordered rightfully that it be raised to 500. I wish it could be more, but as you know, you can't spend money that you don't have unless you resort to borrowing again. But so I agree with the move of the president to defy the advice of his economic team and actually gave more than double than what was advised.
But Harry, there are also some allies of the president who are calling for a temporary suspension of the fuel excise tax. So it will impact more Filipino people rather than targeted subsidies and dole-outs. Do you think that we should suspend it?
Well, I see the wisdom in not suspending it right now because in the first place, the ayuda is also made possible because of the excise tax. And I would like to stress that excise tax actually taxes everyone, including those that use the gasoline. No? So I think to forgo with the excise tax will only benefit those who can actually afford the higher prices of gasoline. And that's why that's a form of indirect taxation,
but a lot
which I think is more...
critics are also saying, Harry, that with the subsidies and with these dole-outs, it also opens it up to corruption because it is distributed by government officials.
There will always be problems, but government has to do something because it did not create a conflict in Europe. It just has to cushion the impact of the conflict, and hopefully it will not last long. No? But what I'm saying is, I think it's a right move, ayuda as well as subsidies. No? Long term, perhaps we should look at the excise tax, but as of now, what I'm saying is, for the immediate future, perhaps we would need the extra revenues generated by the excise tax precisely because we have to provide subsidies as well as ayuda.
But they say that the ayudas and these dole-outs, these subsidies, are not enough sa araw-araw na pangangailangan ng ating mga kababayan. So now, there is a clamor to raise the minimum wage to 750 pesos per day. Even Senate President Tito Soto said it should be 1,000 per day.
Alam mo, talagang hindi enough. What we're trying to do is cushion. Bigyan ng konting, kumbaga, remedyo. No? It will never be enough. But, you know, we're hoping that the conflict in Europe, of course, will end soon. No? And that's why I have got on record to say that because of the close friendship of the president to Vladimir Putin and because of the effect on the Philippine economy as well as the worldwide economy, perhaps the president should be one of the peacemakers. No? Because we need this conflict to end because that is ultimately the solution to inflation brought about by the conflict. No? So it's never enough, but government must do something. I think as of now, the status quo as far as the regional wage boards should be allowed to work because legislated minimum wage at a time when we are still recovering from the pandemic and facing inflation because of the conflict in Europe may just lead to increased unemployment.
You talked about President Duterte wanting to be a mediator. Is he really serious about that? Mediating between President Putin, President Zelensky, and the West?
He may not be because it's my suggestion. I would want him to give it a shot. Why? Because he's one of the few friends, I think, right now of President Putin. No? And perhaps President Putin will listen to him.
Why is he continuing to take a neutral stance against Russia when almost all the countries have said this has to stop?
Well, as a matter of record, Rico, no, we voted in favor of the resolution
That's
condemning the invasion as illegal, as in fact it is. But he's taking a neutral stand because in the past, when it's the West breaching international law, resorting to unilateral use of force, we don't get this kind of protest that we are hearing now against Russia. No? They invaded Iraq, and yet, despite the fact it was equally illegal under international law, there was some protestations, but not as loud as we have now. And I think the President's point is, while it is illegal, we need to understand also the motivations of Russia. I'm not justifying it, but in the mind of Russia, under international law, self-defense is a lawful instance when you resort to unilateral force. I think it's wrong, but they're thinking that if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, then it becomes a threat to them. I reiterate that's wrong because the definition of an armed attack for which we could use resort to self-defense is the sending of troops across international borders. No? But what can you do? That's how they feel about it.
Let's get now to another issue, especially now during this campaign season, Harry, and this is about vote buying. There's been criticism on various camps that they're buying votes. They're paying for people to attend rallies in this province, in this city, here and there. If you become senator, how can we strengthen our laws on vote buying?
I think all the laws are in existence. We need to improve the implementation, and that's
So why
be a
is there
job
not
of the
enough
executive.
implementation? Why is there not enough enforcement if it's already strengthened in the laws?
Well, I think the COMELEC should flex its muscles. They do have the authority to order the PNP and the AFP even, no, to implement our elections laws. No? So they should just do it.
On another important issue right now is the fight, the war on drugs. Should it continue to adopt, the next administration, should it continue to adopt an ironclad, no-nonsense anti-drug policy, just like what President Duterte did?
Well, I think even the United Nations, no, it is in the agenda. We should have an unrelentless effort to curb trade in illegal drugs. There can be no substitute.
And of course, if you become senator this coming May 9th, what will be the first bill you will file when you sit in the Senate?
I would say it would first be the what I promised, the provinces ravaged by Typhoon Odette, no, which is a supplemental budget bill, because I know that the provision of the 2022 budget is not sufficient, not just even for purposes of rebuilding homes, more importantly, reviving livelihoods. Then we would have to look at health, because that's my pet law when I was a congressman. I authored universal healthcare law, and I'm now convinced that the only way universal healthcare law will work is if we abolish PhilHealth, replace it with a National Health Service, because it will achieve two things: get rid of the corrupt ones in PhilHealth, and number two, emphasize that universal healthcare is not the same as PhilHealth of the past. It is not just medical insurance. We will not rely on the premiums alone for benefits. We will use government funds to promote the right to
So
health.
why wasn't it done in this administration?
Well, I authored universal health care, and in my version, I wanted to abolish PhilHealth. Unfortunately, the author of the Senate version of the bill was Ralph Recto, who was also author of the PhilHealth law. So I think it was around March of 2019, when Congress was about to go on recess, I made a judgment call. I passed our version in the House as early as September of 2017. And March 2019, nothing was happening in the Senate. So I called a meeting in Malacanang. I was already spokesperson. And I agreed by way of compromise, okay, let's retain PhilHealth, but let's provide for accountabilities. Accountabilities which proved inefficient or not insufficient, because obviously no one has been fired from PhilHealth. We still have ghost claims, and we still have hospitals complaining that their valid claims have not been settled by the agency.
So, Harry, it is clear what your legislative priorities will be if you become senator after May 9th. But there are also a lot of question marks why you joined the Marcos-Duterte Senate slate, because you are known to be a human rights lawyer, anti-Marcos, a Marcos activist. So, why are you part now of the Marcos-Duterte tandem? How do you reconcile the past of Marcos with your decision to join this tandem?
Because the sin of the father is not the sin of the son. I made my due diligence. Bongbong Marcos has not been convicted of any crime involving graft and corruption. He has not been convicted, even accused of human rights violations. And there's been decisions in the U.S. pursuant to the Alien Tort Claims Act for human rights violations. And it is the Marcos himself, and of course, when he died, his estate, no, that is being made to pay, but not Bongbong Marcos himself.
But didn't you even consider his father's sins? His father being a dictator. Thousands were killed, tortured, and jailed. There were so many Marcos atrocities. And he was in the home of his father in Malacanang. Didn't that even cross your mind?
It did, and I realized that he should not be made accountable for whatever his father did. In the same way that I will not be responsible for whatever my father did.
What about the unpaid taxes of the Marcoses? The BIR is charging him more than 200 billion pesos. Shouldn't he be paying those taxes before he runs for president?
You know,
or even before he's elected?
There's a saying, there's only two certain things in life, death and taxes. Government has all the remedies if it wants to collect. Let government collect.
All right. Here's another issue. I did a little bit of research on your background. You are a top debater, an award-winning debater, and you mentored and coached the UP College of Law moot teams that won in various international competitions, particularly those in Oxford, one of the best schools and debating clubs in the world. But the tandem that you support, Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte, do not even want to participate in any of the debates, just like what we had here on CNN Philippines. Why not you, as a top debater, coach them for them to join these debates,
Well,
Harry?
you know, I'm no longer a debate coach because I've ceased to become
But you are
an
a top
academic.
debater.
Yes, but number one, it's not my business to speak for them. You should ask them. The first and last time I agreed to be spokesperson was for President Duterte, and I'm sorry, I have no authority to speak either for Bongbong Marcos or for Inday Sara. They have spokesperson. So I think they should be the ones to answer on behalf of the principals. No? As far as I'm concerned, I join every forum, including this current forum, because I think it's important that people should know my legislative agenda, if only because I'm convinced that if they know my legislative agenda, they know that I can do more than dance.
But shouldn't your candidate for president and vice president also be up on the stage with all the presidential candidates who have showed up in the presidential forums and also the vice presidential forums? Would you not advise them to join so that at least they can debate, they can rebut all the issues against them and not just be part of one-on-one interviews?
What's interesting is they didn't ask for my opinion. I did not give
Shouldn't
my
you be
opinion.
giving them your opinion being a top debater?
Not
Harry?
really, because I'm only an adopted candidate. No, so it's not my business. It's their lookout. They know that there may be ramifications, and they're willing to face the ramifications for their refusal to debate. No, but the point I'm making is at the time of the internet, and precisely because we have mass media, if you want to know the platforms of candidate, you will, and not just through debates.
And of course, yesterday we saw the PDP Laban Kusi Wing endorsing Bongbong Marcos for president. You were the former presidential spokesperson of Duterte. He hasn't said anything yet, but if you are inside his mind, will he still be anointing a presidential candidate, or will he just stay away or eventually go with the PDP Laban Kusi Wing?
I'm
Harry?
so sorry. I'm no longer a spokesperson. I have
But
no
you were
authority.
with him for many
Despite
years.
that, I had an obligation to speak for him, but I ceased to have that obligation and right to do so. So I suggest you ask the president directly because I have no authority to speak for him.
Well, Martin Andanar has said that the decision of the PDP Laban Kusi Wing is not necessarily the decision of President Duterte. Harry, we will take this short break and we'll continue our up-close conversation with Harry Roque right after this. This is the final word on CNN Philippines. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rico Hizon. Still with us tonight for an up-close conversation is senatorial candidate and former presidential spokesperson, Harry Roque. Harry, we have more questions for you, no? Particularly on social media, about your dancing on TikTok. There are pros and there are cons. do you really have to dance to be able to impart your legislative agenda to the Filipino people?
I think so, because people know that I was an associate professor of law at the UP College of Law, visiting scholar at National University of Singapore, an adjunct professor at American University. I have nothing to prove by way of capability as far as being a lawyer, being a legal scholar, and being a legislator is concerned. But because I was spokesperson for the longest time, and many people know me only as a spokesperson, they think I'm a very ferocious person, which actually affects my likability. So by dancing, I show them that I am not the ferocious person that you see who was presidential spokesperson. That's why I insist I will never be spokesperson for anyone again.
Yeah, but-
and that's why I'm sorry I'm not able to answer many of your questions already.
But Harry, this election is not about entertainment. It's about, serving the people, addressing their current issues,
Yes.
pandemic response, employment, jobs, food, power, protecting their rights.
Of course, I address those two and I dance. And of course, the dancing captures the interest so that after my dancing, they listen to what I have to say.
So, this is a gimmick, this entertainment, this singing. Will you also be singing? Is the
Well,
next question.
I don't have a voice for it, so I can't sing. But we're both communicators. And when there's about 13 or 14 people who will speak, and it's going to be worse because there's going to be local candidates beginning the 25th, you need to capture the attention of the people. And that's what I'm doing. It's part of improving communication between the audience and myself. And of course, people on the internet may not like it, but I can assure you, I always ask the audience, do you still want me to dance? And they all clamor for it, so I do.
We are in the last 1 minute of our interview for this up-close conversation with you, Harry, and we will be asking you about 10 questions, yes or no, no explanation. Just give us your direct answer if it's a yes or a no. Should we repeal the oil deregulation law?
Yes.
Are you in favor of reviving the Bataan nuclear power plant?
No.
If you become senator, will you make it mandatory for yourself, the vice president, and members of Congress to reveal their statement of asset, liabilities, and net worth to the public? Will you allow the International Criminal Court to investigate President Duterte?
No.
Do you favor the reimposition of the death penalty for drug-related crimes?
No.
Do you favor resuming peace talks with the communist rebels?
No.
Will you allow joint exploration of the West Philippine Sea?
Yes.
Should the country be more aggressive in protecting its maritime interests in the West Philippine Sea?
No.
And finally, Harry, your final word on why our kababayans should vote for you this coming May 9th as one of the 12 senators of the Republic.
Being a senator means writing laws, drafting policies. I think I have proven myself not just as a lawyer, but also as a professor of law, as a student of law, as well as someone who has used the law to accord justice to victims of injustice. I've also proven myself as a lawmaker. I was primary author of universal health care, free irrigation, free lunch for malnourished children, the AIDS law, and one of the proponents of the free college tuition for state universities and colleges. So I know the law, I use the law for justice, and I've used the law for policy that has provided genuine change in the Philippine society. That's more than enough reasons for the people to elect me into the Senate.
Senatorial candidate Harry Roque, thank you so much for joining us on The Final Word.
Thank you very much as well.